Today we're given more details in the Germanwings plane crash in France. The new information comes on today's date, March 26th, 2015. Today's date numerology is 44, a number that is directly connected to this crash. And here we're looking at today's headlines. It was on purpose. This comes after yesterday's breaking news from the New York Times that the pilot was locked out of the cockpit during the time of the crash. They gave us that detail yesterday and kind of held it over our heads as a mystery. Then today, the bigger news came out that the plane was crashed deliberately by the co-pilot. And here again, they're showing us this image. You can't see a plane, but you can see this orange blot in the center of the screen that they say is the black box. So here we go, another plane story with no plane in sight. Again, yesterday's details about the pilot came courtesy of the New York Times. And when CNN first introduced the information, they acted as if they couldn't confirm it, and if this was just some rogue reporting by the New York Times. But today, all the mainstream sources are on board. The plane was crashed intentionally. That's what came out of the New York Times, so that's what's going to stand. And what I want to point out is that the New York Times has the Pythagorean gematria of 93, a very central number in this plane crash, in previous plane crashes. Recall on 9/11, it was Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania. The first plane to hit the World Trade Center hit floor 93. Flight 93 had 33 passengers. There was the 93 World Trade Center bombing. Germanwings flight had the coded gematria of 93 in this. And of course, this is the number of Thelema, do what thou wilt. Also, Saturn has a gematria of 93. All this stuff ties into Satan worship. So the headline up above says, it was on purpose in caps. In Pythagorean gematria, this sums to 67. With S exceptions, it sums to 85, but we're going to look at this 67 because this is a number of much significance. The word satanic is a word with 67 gematria in simple English, and look at how it closes with that 9-3. Satanic. IC becomes 9-3. It was reported that there were 144 passengers plus 6 crew, so 150 total. But I want to focus on these 144 passengers. This was the first detail I saw in the story, and right away I said, oh boy. In Revelation 7:4, this number is mentioned. It was very important in this year's Super Bowl. I said to watch out this year for all news stories. I said watch out for the numbers 144 and 52. It seems that numbers that come out of major sports events also translate into our news stories, as crazy as that might sound. But the way this can be explained is the same sources or the same people are running the media, that are running the movies, that are running the sports leagues. They're the Zionist Jews. I mean, their names are a giveaway. Some people, when you say that kind of information, they say that's anti-Semitic, but no, we're just calling spades spades. And we'll get more into this topic and see just how relevant it is. So the phrase mark of the beast has the gematria of 144. Today's date has a numerology of 44, which is very important with the number 144. Today's date is March 26, 2015. 3 plus 26 plus 15 is 44. If you write out the word 44, it sums to 144 in simple English gematria. So does the date. If you write out April 4th and sum it, it also sums to 144. And think about that. April 4th is 4-4. To me, what this shows is how well thought out our calendar system is, how well thought out our alphabetic order is, how well thought out our language is. And it shows me that the people who are building this world around us, this stuff has always been of very much importance to them. I mean, anybody who can deny that the word 44 written out and the date April 4th written out summing to 144, anyone who can deny the significance of that and say it's just coincidence isn't getting it. As a kid, I used to always ask why the word 40 was spelled without a U. No one knew the answer. Well, I think I know the answer now from studying this gematria. I think it's to hit this. Recall, the plane crashed on a date with 42 numerology. The word airlines equals 42, meaning of life number. If you write out 42, it also sums to 142. Two very important numbers, two big stories coming on these dates. So, the picture of the pilot, or the co-pilot, his name is Andreas Lubitz. The picture they're putting out of him in the media shows him standing in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. This is the only picture they're showing in all media sources. It makes you wonder, why? Why this picture of him posed in front of the Golden Gate Bridge? True Seeker, in doing this research, I also am trying to piece together the bigger picture and why they hit us with these specific lies. I said in the last video post on this that they give us these stories as distractions, to distract us from the more important information of the day, such as the fact that our troops are going to remain in Afghanistan. That's a much bigger news story. That's one that's actually important to us as citizens. Why? Because parents have to send their kids over there. We as taxpayers have to pay for this. We have to ask ourselves, is our military being used for an appropriate purpose? It seems to me that they're in Afghanistan to guard the mountains that essentially hold all the resources to make the cell phones. I mean, it might be as simple as that. But also, these stories not only distracting us from more important information, they also seem to be part of an ongoing riddle that gives way to stories that are coming in the future. I've documented this on my blog, how seemingly meaningless stories connect to sports games and other news. Yes, even the sports games, they're all part of this. So, that picture of him in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, I'll show you how this ties in. I said all this stuff seems to tie to Satanism. The Church of Satan was established in San Francisco in the year 1966. That's 49 years ago now. And for anybody who follows sports, they know that the city of San Francisco is home of the 49ers. And this year, San Francisco is hosting Super Bowl 50 on February 27th, 2-7. A lot like 27, a number often having to do with death and unfortunate things. So, 49 years later is this year, 2015, from the year the Church of Satan was established. I want to point out that Revelation has the Pythagorean gematria of 49, and there's speculation that Revelation is a false telling, a manipulation, not a true chapter that belongs in the Bible. And a lot of people point out that how Revelation is being fulfilled by events that are happening in the world, from the bombing of Syria to environmental disasters to so much more. And what I always say to these people is, yeah, perhaps so, or is it that people are aware of this biblical prophecy and they're falsifying it and reporting it in our media to deceive the masses who are waiting for the return of Jesus? To me, it seems that that's more likely what is going on. And again, I want to point out that this year, San Francisco will be home to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 50. Why is it in San Francisco? Possibly because San Francisco has a Pythagorean gematria of 50, and they're hosting Super Bowl 50 on 2-7. The city used to be once 5-0 in Super Bowls, so these numbers are important to them. And if you can recall, Harrison Ford supposedly had a plane crash earlier this year, and on the side of that plane was the number 50. So perhaps all these stories are riddles, clues for what is coming. When they were talking about the Los Angeles football stadium as a possibility, the mainstream media was saying that could be a target for an airplane in a future terrorist attack. And I thought, how weird. Why are they saying that? Couldn't any stadium theoretically be a target for an airplane? Why are they saying that about the new LA stadium? That doesn't even make sense. So again, number 93. Why is that relevant here? Because the New York Times is who first started this, ongoing soap opera detail about the pilot being locked out. Now the next day, the co-pilot locked out the pilot and crashed the plane on purpose is the story. Again, this goes back to Saturn worship. Saturn has this gematria of 93. If you read about Saturn, there's so much 93 in the scientific reporting of Saturn. And again, as a little kid, I used to ask my teachers when we studied this kind of stuff and had to remember it for a test, I'd ask the teacher how anybody could possibly be so certain of this. I mean, nobody's been to Saturn. What are they able to make all these calculations through what? You know? And my teachers back then, they'd have these flimsy responses. True secret, what I'm trying to show you is the world, the information built around us, it is based on occult numerology. And for the most part, it's a bunch of bullshit. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, these numbers do have meaning. And the more I live, the more I find the significance of these numbers. But to do this, to make up information based on these numbers of importance and treat it as legitimate, it's just a joke. The rings of Saturn are made up of 93% ice? Yeah, right. The sun is 93 million miles away? I don't buy it. The sun with Pythagorean gematria sums to 33. So now let's look more at the name of this man, the co-pilot supposedly responsible for wrecking the plane on purpose. If the story is a hoax, if it's completely made up, then where did they pull this name Andreas Lubitz out of? Andreas Lubitz. I'll show you that in a second. I just want to show you a few other curiosities before we get to it. If you read the story, it has commentary from the CEO of the parent company of Germanwings, Lufthansa. His name is Carsten Spohr. Carsten Spohr, with simple English gematria, sums to 156. Just like if you write out the word 33 and sum it, it sums to 156. If you can recall, the emergency site set up from the crash was 77 kilometers away in a town with a 33 name. They love to get their 33s in these stories. And then Lufthansa has this Pythagorean gematria with the S exception of 39, another number we see a lot. But what's most interesting here is the pilot's name. In Pythagorean gematria, Andreas Lubitz sums to 53 with the S exception 62, like the word Mason. The number 53 is being coded into a lot at this period in time. It's Fast and Furious and so much more. Again, his picture's in front of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And what I want to point out is we just talked about how the Super Bowl is coming there. For another football reference, all NFL teams have the 53-man roster. And the biggest thing I can think coming to San Francisco is the Super Bowl in the near future. The name Andreas Lubitz with simple English gematria sums to 152. Now check this out. This is gematrix.org. Here's the gematria calculator. It does simple English, English, and Jewish gematria. Notice that in Jewish gematria, the name works out to 1052. Drop this 0 and it's 152, just like the simple English gematria. This is abnormal. This isn't the way most words work out. Look at the, for example. We'll just use the. The most often written number in English codes to 33 and 113. Two very important numbers, but not like 1052 and 152. So right away I said, what does this number mean? And sometimes I think these are possibly codes for a coming date. So I looked up what the 152nd day of the year is. That's June 1st. June 1st. On June 1st in San Francisco, they're playing the Pittsburgh Pirates of Pennsylvania. Recall, where Flight 93 of 33 passengers once crashed in Pennsylvania. And would you believe the gematria of Pennsylvania? It's also 152. So, I don't know for certain that anything's going to happen on June 1st or that anything's going to happen in San Francisco. But what I am trying to look at is why we're given these false details and what's the meaning behind them. And in this case, this possibly could be it. It possibly could be code for a future date. It could be referring to the 152nd day of the year in San Francisco. Their baseball team won the World Series last year. They won it 66 days after the earthquake that was the worst since the 1989 World Series. And World Series has a gematria of 66. The same year the Church of Satan was established in San Francisco. So all these numbers, they come together. But again, it doesn't mean that anything's going to happen on June 1st or in San Francisco. But at the same time, it's worth taking note of, because why else are they giving us these pictures of the pilot chilling in San Francisco in front of the Golden Gate Bridge? You know? On September 11th, a major landmark was destroyed that was recognized by the nation. If the Golden Gate Bridge was ever destroyed, that's absolutely a landmark that most people in this world know where it is and what city it belongs to. And at this time, there's no reason for him to be, showing this picture of him in front of this bridge. What's it about? The crash is in France. It's a German airline. The United States seems to be entirely separate. But here's the one image they put out of him in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. On Fox News, they were running with this story that this was another pilot suicide. There's been at least 5 since 76. Remember that headline we started with, that it was on purpose, some to 67. 76 is the flip of 67. This is the same year Ebola was discovered. If you look at the dates and these crashes that are listed in their story, they're also pretty curious. They even got one with 44 fatalities. It seems like a really strange thing for a pilot to do, to kill an entire flight of people. Why would a human being do such a thing? Just doesn't add up. True Seeker, I want to close by looking at this point. Our mainstream media seems to be a series of lies, distractions, deceptions, all meant to program our minds with nonsense and keep us from looking at the things we should be looking at and talking about as a society. I'm sure all throughout the nation people are talking about this airplane accident and have probably overlooked the headlines that troops are remaining in Afghanistan. Our mainstream media isn't giving us 24/7 coverage of why the troops are going to remain in Afghanistan, but they are talking a lot about the story regarding this plane crash, showing us the same image over and over with no plane. Well, look at this. From Jewish texts, Baba Kama 113a, Jews may use lies to circumvent a Gentile. A Gentile is a non-Jew. Rule 113. Now let me show you something really interesting in the English language. The word dishonest is 113. The word mainstream, as in mainstream media, is 113. And so is the word green screen, which we get a lot of in our media, without them telling us. We live in an age of advanced technology. Images, video, it can all be manipulated. And it is. On September 11th, we were shown fake plane images. That's how they dissolved or disappeared right into the building, wings and all. Somehow the lightweight wings cut through steel and concrete, none of which fell to the streets of New York. And somehow that day, not a single plane or black box was recovered. No plane anywhere. Since the beginning of my blog, I've talked about the importance of the God gematria as well as lie. To me, this says a lot, that the word God and lie have the same gematria. It seems that for most people, and I don't blame anyone for this, because, what are you supposed to do as a person when all you're told is lies? It's no wonder so many people are so well invested in so many lies. The mainstream media, the school textbooks, and so much more have been lying to them on the daily. Think about all the kids reading about 93% ice around Saturn, but have never been taught gematria. This is what has to stop, True Seeker. Our media is ran by Zionist Jews. In Revelation, they're referred to as the synagogue of Satan. It's said that they'll run things in the end times. And this is how it looks. From history, here's the crash of Indian Airlines Flight 113. From my perspective, this looks like another hoax by the numbers. Killing 133 people? October's the only month with 33 gematria. Of course, 113 people on board. Indian's a 33 word. Remember the plane that disappeared March 7th, 8th, depending on where you were in the world last year, the Malaysian flight, it crashed in the Indian Ocean, supposedly. Airlines, 42 word, 51 like conspiracy with the S exception. The date numerology was very interesting. The smaller method, it summed to 37, leaving 73 days left in the year. That's how many days are left in the year after October 19th. And I'm telling you, these people love to put their numbers all over all of their hoaxes. On this video blog, I've covered several underplane crashes, MH17, Malaysian plane, both of them. All those videos are worth checking out, plus the rest of my collection. All this stuff connects. All of this stuff connects. CNN has kept up this headline all day. That's unusual for them. They normally switch up the headlines throughout the day. They want everyone to see this. It was on purpose. And I would say the reason for that is because so many people fly and, so many people take on unnecessary anxiety. How many people are going to be in the airport wondering if they got the next suicidal pilot on their, on their plane? And in reality, it's not something anyone needs to be thinking about or be afraid of. There's so many planes in the sky. As Fox News showed, this has maybe happened 5 times since 1976. Imagine how many flights there's been since 1976. But that's what they do. They get us caught up in nonsense. Meanwhile, we're not thinking about what's real. Also, while we're here, I'll just point out this other headline from today. Blast collapses buildings in New York's East Village. Right away, I laughed and I said, oh my God, there were headlines like this is exactly this time last year. And if you read the article, it says, yeah, last March, New York blamed the collapse of buildings on a gas leak as well. Can you imagine a gas leak taking down a whole building, Truth Seeker? They're still demolishing buildings in New York and blaming it on other things. At least it wasn't on a plane this time, but a gas leak? Give me a break. And this also reminds me about the Church of Satan where we started. The Church of Satan has left San Francisco and is now located in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of New York. After Super Bowl 48, there were multiple explosions underground in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, and they were later blamed on gas leaks. But fortunately that day, no buildings came down. So anyway, hope you learned something new here, Truth Seeker. Got to spread the word about this mainstream media. It's just getting out of hand, Since about September 2013, our media has taken it to a whole new level, and it seems like that level of dishonesty is increasing each day. So until next time, take care.